Welcome to the sixth part of the lecture on the depressions and crisis. And in this part, we will discuss a little bit more on the geographic and social expansion of the capitalist system, and then we will see the radical changes in the political and economic structure part, basically. So in the first part, actually this is the third explanation. That's Rosa Luxemburg's explanation. So when the economy is in relatively safe position, then expansion to the new grounds like Africa, where basically you need some work to change the economic structures there, or making women work, which needs a significant change in the family structure, are things people refrain to do because the existing world has an order, and playing with that order is risky. You don't know what will happen exactly. But when the economic system goes into a deep crisis, now extreme solutions are sought, and among those extreme solutions are also, let's say, ones which might basically temper rules of the system. Famously in England, for example, at some point, even the Sunday masses were not actually people didn't. The employers didn't want their workers to join to the Sunday masses. So the main point is that even the existing the certain rules which were taken as granted starts to be challenged, and among those things are also, the spheres that are outside of the capitalist system. So increasingly, those spheres are also people sought to include also those spheres to the capitalist system, the economic system, that are functioning with the rules of the capitalism. One example is in the late 19th century, there was a crisis in the economic system, and that's basically the time when the Europeans starts to say that, well, maybe we have our duty to civilize, in quotation marks, Africa, and they start to colonize African continent below the Saharan desert at the time. Suddenly they realize their duty in that sense, basically. So that's an example of it. But even if in some cases, basically the major expansions are actually thought to be at the beginning of the system, beginning of the not in the process where the Africa is colonized, but rather when England become dominant power of the system and basically reorganize the political structure of the system. But anyway, this is going to the other explanation. So basically, at the time of the crisis, these expansions are helping the system. But the main problem is the space where the system can expand is limited. So if this is the way the system is restoring the profit rates back, then sooner or later the system will run out of its space to expand. And the worst thing is, as the system expands, it gets bigger. So now it needs a bigger area to expand. So remaining area will become smaller compared with the existing system, and so that becomes the system's ability to restore its profit rates even more difficult. So the other one, radical change in the political and economic structure. This means actually the economic system, even though it's capitalism, it has specific characteristics, specific rules. And those rules are setting the base of the economic system, and that base itself might basically initially restore the profit rates to a higher value. But once this base is established, then basically the ability to exploit this base becomes of the actors in the space. The major actors are, of course, capitalists in this case, as always in the capitalist economic system, becomes smaller and smaller, so the initial jump in the profit rate will follow up with slow decrease in the profit rate and slow increase in the organic composition of capital. And it will come to a point where basically profit rate will be so low that it will become impossible to restore it. When it comes to that point, basically, now the demand to reorganize the economic system becomes more dominant. In initial times, that demand is small because new system is risky, but at the time of crisis, those people want to take those risks to reorganize the system, because the system, the profit rates might be so low, otherwise they might the whole existence of the system might be in crisis. As a result, those radical changes might be made and the system might restore itself. As Roosevelt basically says, for example, he says, I have made a lot of radical changes in the system, but actually I have saved capitalism. So without those radical changes, which might maybe some of them might be unpleasant for the capitalists, the capitalist system will be there, basically. He says, and he explains this with very clear words. You might look for that. So let's go down. But this third explanation is a little bit chaotic. How can we formulate, basically, these structural changes in the economic and political and social system, basically? Political and economic system is a complex thing, and how can we say we have built a new structure which will support new support a new expansion and with initially high profit rate? The modeling this is a difficult thing, and also we don't know whether this potential to expand has limits or not. Well, there are two different models. One is actually SSA model, social structure of accumulation. That's actually showing the structure of the accumulation. I mean, how accumulation is done in the system, and then that structure becomes not anymore support further accumulation, further investments, and a new structure is basically formed. And then there's another model, which is world system model. While SSA model is for nations, world system model is for the whole world, and it basically is built upon the claim that no country is independent in the system. Actually, the social system that is supporting the accumulation is something global. So we will see it right next to the International Economics and Development chapter. For now, we will see the SSA model. I'm not a fan of it. I actually think that the World System School is right. Actually, the system is global. We cannot isolate nations, especially when we are talking about the system that is supporting the accumulation. But it's a popular model. It's fun, so I want to mention SSA model. So, SSA model assumes basically, initially you have a certain structure that is supporting the accumulation, and that after you build this structure, the profit rate will be high, and then the profit rate after you build this structure, immediately profit rate starts to fall. But initially it stays high, and it will the system, the economic system, will be able to expand. But at some point, the profit rates will fall to below a certain point. So the further expansion becomes difficult and then impossible. So at that point, there will be demand for a new transformation in the system, and that transformation will create a new SSA or new social structure of accumulation, and the profit rates will rise again. So how this is used? This is used to basically analyze, for example, in Bowles article of Bowles, one of the Marxist economists, to analyze U.S. Economic transformation in 1970s and 80s. So he describes 4 different elements of the SSA. So you can describe for any country, you can describe different elements. It's not necessary to have these 4 elements. But according to him, in the United States, there were 4 elements. One was the relation between the capital and labor. The other one was the relation between capital and citizens. Here, citizens as buyers, basically, and as the people who are voting for the political system. And then you have Pax Americana, the American peace, which is basically, which also defines actually the US relation with the outside of the world. And then you have intercapitalist competition. Intercapitalist competition is pretty much here the passive element, which means when things are good and companies can easily expand, they don't compete with each other because there are outside abilities for them to invest. But when their ability to expand gets smaller, then they are trying to get each other's share, basically each other's area. So capitalist competition gets high, and that will increase the cost for the companies, which will make things worse, basically. And when they don't compete with each other that much, then basically things are easier for them because the cost of the competition will fall. So, in 1940s and 50s, so the state has founded, state has actually created a system, particular laws, which allow a certain type of unionization. And it allows a certain type of unionization, so those unions bargain with the companies, and those bargaining power is actually also backed by the government. So if there is a disagreement, government and companies, government becomes a mediator between companies and the union. So this gives a lot of powers to the union, but it also limits their methods. So they get this power, but many different type of striking methods. For example, sympathy strikes, strikes done for the political purposes, or strikes done for supporting companies that are other workers in other companies, basically, or partial strikes. For example, you might have I might be working in the transportation company, and in a factory, basically, my co-workers might be gone to strikes, and I might refuse to carry the goods that are produced by that, basically, that company, basically, that factory, basically. That's also a possible type of strike, for example. So, all of these strikes were banned, and only type of basically, negotiation could be made for the wages, basically, and working conditions. A broader bargaining power on the whole system was not done, and so each company could only bargain for his or her workplace. Each union could only bargain for each workers in one workplace can only bargain for their workplace, basically. So all of these things had decreased the labor, the cost of these disagreements. It gave workers power, of course, which might be partially increasing the labor cost, but decrease the labor cost due to the disagreements, basically. On the other hand, certain sectors like agriculture sectors, where you had migrant labor force coming from Mexico, and basically those sectors were sectors where you don't have workers with bargaining power, and basically in those sectors prices were cheap, so they kind of are benefiting the profit rate of the whole economic system. This was one thing. The second thing is the state was creating a subsidized demand. It is actually creating its own demand, but it's also subsidizing demand through the welfare state, through free colleges, free healthcare for the whole society. So demand is stabilized by the companies. Labor cost and labor conflict is somehow controlled. But the most important element was expansion of the capitalist system to the whole globe. So the capitalist system, the American companies now expand the whole world, which means actually the excess amount of surplus value was now able to come to the United States from the rest of the world. So this actually balanced any cost which might occur due to the labor organization, basically. So we will talk a little bit more on this for this period after in the next part, basically. See you then.